The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, hello everyone and welcome to this webinar that will hopefully give you some guidance on how to prepare your awards submission. Just a couple of things to remind you of. The webinar is being recorded and will be made available on the website after this session today, and all those that have registered for the webinar will also be emailed a link so that you can refer back to it as you prepare your submission. I'd also ask, there'll be opportunities to ask questions at the end of the presentation. For those that don't have any audio capability, you are able to type your questions in the bottom panel that you'll see, hopefully should see in front of you. Please feel free to sort of type them in as we proceed, but they'll be answered at the end of the presentation. Okay, so just a bit of an overview. I'll start off with going through some frequently asked questions that come up on a sort of a yearly basis. Some of this information is also contained within the nomination guidelines, but I'll probably go over them again because sometimes some people sort of miss sort of reading them in detail. I'll then go through some of the guidelines and some tips, discuss with you appropriate ways to potentially present your submission, looking at your opening statements, supporting statements and closing statements, some additional recommendations. A lot of this commentary comes from some of the national judging panels over the past few years, so it's probably worthwhile to take on board some of their comments, and then briefly go through the written materials that you'll need to include with your submission. Again, they're contained within the guidelines, but I have noticed previous years that potentially people fail to read them in detail and don't actually follow what is required. So it's really important to take that on board. So just some frequently asked questions that come up from time to time. Do I have to be a member of PIA to enter a project in the awards? Unless the eligibility criteria for a specific category requires you to be a member, non-members may enter. So the categories that do require you to be a member are Planner of the Year and Young Planner of the Year. And can you nominate your project in more than one category? Yes, that is possible, but we note that you'll need to make sure that each nomination is accompanied by a separate set of documents that address the appropriate selection criteria. You simply can't sort of submit all your categories and just nominate for multiple entries and think that that will sort of be judged appropriately. That will probably hinder the outcome. And how should I present my submission? Well, the written component of your entry must address the selection criteria for the particular category and be presented in A4 format. We definitely, and this is a big thing, encourage those that have had close involvement on the project be involved in the preparation of the submission materials. I know that a lot of companies sometimes seek the support of external media and PR people to potentially help in writing the submission, but I think it's very important that that those that know the intricacies and the detail of the project are closely involved in the written components, and that is certainly, I guess, sort of become apparent with the judging, that sometimes it's felt that the nomination's probably not been written by those that have been involved in the project, so that's something to bear in mind as well. Will my submission materials be returned? No, they won't unless you have specifically asked for that when you nominate. All the entries will become the property of PIA, and certainly we have the right to use the information and any of the photos and imagery that are supplied as well. So that's why it's also important when filling in your nomination form that you have the permission of the sort of the owners of the intellectual property regarding that. Some of the other matters that you need to know, that the judges do not need to confer an award in all categories. Only one award winner will be granted in each of these sort of general categories and then elevated to PIA national awards. In some states and territories, there might be some state-only based awards that are offered. They'll only be judged at a local level, and they won't be eligible to be elevated to the national awards. Again, all this information should be clearly outlined in the nomination guidelines for your state. But again, if in any doubt, please give your local office a call. And also the judging panel may select more than one entry to receive commendation awards. Also, the judging panel has the right to move an award nomination into a different category if they feel that there might be, it's more appropriate. But again, they will contact, you'll be sort of contacted to be notified if this is the case. And also we advise that contact with members of any local judging panels to discuss an award nomination is strictly prohibited. If you do have questions pertaining to the information within the nomination guidelines, then please contact your local office. Alternatively, you can also contact myself as well, and email address is on the website, but your local office will be best placed to help you with that. If they can't, I'm sure that they will take the question on notice and then seek to have your question answered. Okay, now some guidelines and tips for writing a quality award submission. I guess the overall key to writing a well-written nomination is providing the judges with specific information illustrating how the individual, if you're nominating for a person or if it's a group collaboration, demonstrate leading practice, leadership and achievement in the planning profession. And I think it does come down to the leading and best practice. What is it that makes your project sort of different, and what qualities could be applied on a national level as well. Some things to think about when preparing your written component, to make sure that you've got clear, direct and specific statement of why the nominee, if you're nominating under the people categories, or the project deserves recognition, providing the judging panel with enough information that they can become familiar with the specific challenges, actions and results or objectives achieved with a particular program. Also making sure that you're listing the most important information in the first few paragraphs and elaborating necessary as you addressing all the selection criteria. You shouldn't be vague in your statements and avoid sweeping generalities. It's also really important that you really focus on what is different about your project, what hasn't been done before with some of the various elements. With your supporting statements, it's always really important to provide some specific examples when you're addressing the respective criteria. Demonstrate why the project is leading practice, why it is different from the way a project or or other sorts of things have been carried out in the past, particularly identifying any original concepts or refinements of techniques or procedures. For example, those potentially nominating for the community engagement award as well, if there's a particular way in which you've gone about that process that might be different or innovative. The importance, to the planning profession, the portability of ideas and ease with which they have been accepted, and also very important to document the outcomes, results, and any challenges resolved as well. Sort of take the judges sort of on the journey from, were the original objectives of the project achieved, and how, or if not, what has happened through the end of the process. Also, highlighting, particularly for the people categories, any activities above and beyond the nominee's job description, particularly for the non-project categories. Including qualities that make a person outstanding and that are clearly relevant to the award criteria. Important to sort of include, a strong closing statement which reinforces the notable attributes of your award submission, describing how others, regard the nominee or project being nominated. It's always beneficial to provide supporting written statements from third parties to substantiate your statements, particularly from those that might be involved in the implementation of the project, community groups that might have been involved in a project, and other parties as well. They are often very important to include. And can be in addition to the 5 pages of your written submission as well. Some additional recommendations, making sure that you prepare your nomination in a sequenced and logical format. Project images and photos should be incorporated wherever possible, or certainly provided as supplementary information as well. Really give some thought to the structure of your submission. The guidelines obviously have a limitation on the number of pages that you can provide, so it's really important to think of the best way to put across all the relevant information that you need to demonstrate why your project should receive an award for excellence. And again, supporting your nomination not only with some of your own observations, but qualitative facts, statistics, metrics, etc. that might have been collected during the preparation of your project, if that's applicable. And again, and this is probably a very big one, it comes up a lot, making sure that you're nominating the project or the individual for the most appropriate category or award. I guess this is probably the 3rd or 4th year that we've had sort of a new set of award categories, and I think that sometimes there's probably still some guidance required on making sure that you're actually putting in for the right award. Really sit down with your project team and I guess work out the particular angles that you might want to promote. Certainly for some projects there might have been a discrete component centred on community engagement that you might want to focus, and certainly it might also be something that's a great planning idea as well. So really make sure that you really do think about the that you are applying for the right one. Again, your local office can be a good source of help, to yourself in going through that process. I do recommend that you touch base with them rather than trying to put together the nomination without any contact. We found that when people do that, they seem to actually focus their time on the right areas in which they need to concentrate in the written components. Just highlighting some of the materials that you need to supply with your entry. Again, they are contained within the nomination guidelines, but you'll be surprised how many people don't often read some of these particulars in great amount of detail, and we have to chase them. So it's really important to include 3 hard copies of all written materials. We do encourage you to also include I guess documentation if it's a piece of research that you're putting in, if it's actually a strategy or a project that you're nominating, you know, also include a copy of the original sort of documentation as well. That the sort of the judges can have a look at. That's in addition to your actual written component addressing the selection criteria. Also including an electronic copy on a USB or CD. And something that's slightly different from previous years, we've always asked for an abstract, but we ask this year that you provide it in the what we've termed project summary sheet Appendix A, which is contained on the website. We're asking for that so that we get some consistency in the information, and it can be helpful for use in any sort of media and sort of post promotional purposes. Again, we highlight the importance of keeping to the maximum amount of pages for the written component as well. Certainly there's probably a little bit of leeway to sort of go over it slightly, but the judges, you know, certainly when in some states where there might be 80 nominations received, they don't have time to go through mountains of paperwork. So it's really important to spend time on that summary, that written component. The other aspects as well is the proof of nomination forms as well, making sure that they are filled out accurately and correctly. Another aspect where we find there's a bit of problems as well is including images and also the resolution and the size of images. If we appreciate sometimes with certain projects you can't often have imagery because there might be some copyright issues if it is in regards to potentially some research work that might be nominated. If you could please contact your office to discuss with them before you nominate, so that there can be an arrangement made to overcome this, because the use of imagery is very important in the production for the actual awards event itself, and also sort of the post sort of promotion as well. So that's essentially an overview. I'd ask if you have any questions to please use the question panel, and we've got people sort of who can respond to that, so either use the chat or questions, or certainly if you have audio we might be able to turn you on so that the group can hear. So, I'm just expanding the question mark. So we've got Dana, can you please provide an update on when the Tasmanian guidelines will be posted online? Look, thanks for your question. I understand that they were just, Tasmanian Division were just waiting on updating some local content. I will contact the Executive Officer and provide an update to the Tasmanian Division. Another one, hi, are these slides available to download? Yes, they will be available to download, Alex. You'll also receive a link to this recording. It'll also be made available on the website, so you can refer to it whilst you're preparing your nomination. Another question from Alex Patton. If you are shortlisted or nominated, is there an opportunity to present? I know that some divisions and states do have a presentation evening. I would suggest that you contact your local state and division to ascertain if that is the case for that state. And another question, can you please provide advice whether the nomination form is to be provided with the submission or before the submission is closed? No, the nomination form can be provided at the time that you lodged all your written documentation. So it doesn't have to be provided before you lodge all your documentation. Okay. Another question, who needs to authorise the nomination if there's more than one party to the project? Is there a limit to the number of project? In terms of who needs to sign off and authorise, it'll be the organisation that retains the intellectual property. So I guess in the case of if it's a government agency that the work is on behalf, then it will be that whoever's sort of senior executive director or whatever the appropriate level is to sign off on that documentation. So hopefully that answers that question. Not sure, Kate, what the last bit of your question, is there a limit, is it to the number of projects you can nominate? If you can just clarify that, I'll answer that for you. Question from Alison, is the project on Appendix A to remain or can it be replaced with the one? No, yes, by all means, please replace that photo with the hero image or images, I guess, that you would want to best convey what your project is about. That is just purely a template which shows you how you should set out the form. We're just wanting some consistency in what is returned to us so that it's comparable across all states and territories. And we're just asking for a Word format because it's a program that everyone should have access to. We're not looking for anything that is you know, significantly desktoped or requiring you know, programs that aren't easily obtainable. Oh, sorry, okay, Kate, so is your limit to the number of project partners? No, there can be as many project partners listed on the nomination form. Clearly, it states on the form that if there isn't enough room to provide an additional piece of paper that documents all the parties involved in the process. Another question, is there a preference for strong visual communications material above descriptive written material? Really what the judges are looking for is, you know, we've seen in the past a lot of people spend significant amount of time on desktop publishing and there's perhaps very little substance to the written submission. So what we really want to you guys to concentrate on is not so much about spending a lot of money or time in making it look pretty. It's really about that written component and demonstrating the merits of why your project deserves an award for excellence. Certainly we want you to kind of concentrate on its structure and making it more about the readability than potentially about it being sort of, yeah, desktop desktop published or looking very professional. But certainly, obviously, put your efforts into making it a well-structured document. By all means, think about adding any visual components as well, particularly if you're demonstrating or trying to give some justification to statements that are made. But by all means, please don't feel free that you have to spend a lot of money or time on making it sort of professionally desktoped. Another question, can the digital copy be provided online, or is it only accepted in the mail USB format, FTP server or email? The reason why we ask for the hard copies is it's more for a national judging process, so that if your project is successful at a local level, we then send those hard copy information to the national judges. So that's why we ask for that. We are trying to move to a fully online nomination process, but that will sort of take a little while to get up and running. So certainly if your files, we encourage you probably not to make your files too large, but by all means, if you have to transfer them via some sort of FTP, Hightail or Dropbox, then look, that's an option as well. I would encourage you to contact your local office just to determine what their requirements are and if there's any issues with that, but it's probably not going to be so much of a problem, and in fact some offices might actually prefer that method, so that's a good point. The template for New South Wales, is that an example of how we should respond to the selection criteria and present the information within 5 pages? I'm not quite sure which template that you're referring to there, but I'll be happy if you could sort of further elaborate on that. I can probably answer that question. Another question, if you are a winning submission, will we be notified of PIA media opportunities to provide through our own channels? Look, you'll definitely probably be provided as soon as the results are made available. Certainly award winners are not notified beforehand, but there is an opportunity through your local state or territory to be involved. We certainly make a lot of posted winning marketing collateral available to those who are successful in either receiving an award for excellence or commendation. So there is opportunity there. Another question, is the summary of the project the same as the answers to the selection criteria? Not quite sure what that is referring to. Perhaps if you were to contact myself through alternative means, I'll answer that question and then can make the answer available on the website. If you're referring to the project summary template, then we do ask that you make it look as consistent with how it is shown. Again, just to get that that consistency across all states and territories. Again, we just want that similar format. It will help with the post promotion on the respective websites. If you would like to talk, if you can raise your hand, we can then unmute you. I'm just getting that from Michelle, who's assisting me today with this audio. Don't know if there's any more questions from those that are still tuned in at the moment. Okay, so according, just received advice sort of no hands. So look, I think that's probably it for today's webinar. By all means, I think just to recap a couple of the key things, it's really about reading the selection criteria in detail, making sure those involved in collating the submission are those that have had been involved in the project quite closely to increase your chances of success. I strongly encourage you to contact your local officers to answer any other specific questions that you have. Again, I'm also available to answer any questions. I am based in the WA office, but have been involved with the awards both as a judge many years ago and also involved in helping to prepare various documents for this process. So again, I'm more than happy to answer any other questions that you have. Certainly throughout the process, if we see that we're getting some sort of consistent questions, we'll make those available on the website as well throughout the process. So I'd just like to potentially now sort of close off this webinar and to wish you all the best in preparing your submission. So thank you very much.